This Friday is not just another day. It's the start of a new version of you. There are moments in life that don't announce themselves loudly. They don't arrive with fireworks or warnings. They slip in quietly, almost unnoticed, until something inside you begins to stir. And if you're here right now, feeling that subtle pull, that quiet tension, that sense that something is about to change, this message is for you. Because this isn't just another day. This isn't just another video. And this Friday is not just another Friday. There is a shift happening. You may not be able to explain it yet. Maybe you've been feeling restless lately. Maybe things that once excited you no longer do. Maybe you felt out of place, like you don't quite belong where you are anymore. Or maybe we started thinking differently, seeing things differently, questioning things you used to accept. That's not random. That's not confusion. That's alignment beginning. Something is moving. Internally and externally at the same time. It's as if life itself is preparing you, quietly, rearranging pieces, closing certain doors, even when you didn't understand why, creating distance between you and people, habits, or paths that no longer match who you're becoming. And yes, it can feel uncomfortable. Growth rarely feels comfortable. Transformation rarely feels clear in the moment. But what if that discomfort is not a sign that something is wrong? What if it's proof that something is finally right? Because here's the truth most people never realize. Not everyone feels this shift. Not everyone notices the change. Not everyone is being called forward. But you are. You wouldn't be here if you weren't. There is a reason this moment found you. A reason these words are reaching you right now. A reason something inside you is saying, pay attention. Because Friday marks a turning point, not just on the calendar, but within you. It's a threshold. A line between who you've been and who you're stepping into. And crossing that line doesn't require perfection. It doesn't require you to have everything figured out. It doesn't even require you to feel completely ready. It only requires one thing, your willingness to step forward, even with uncertainty, even with doubt, even with fear, still whispering in the background, because the version of you that is emerging, the one that is beginning to rise, is not built on comfort. It's built on courage. It's built on awareness. It's built on the quiet decision to keep moving, even when the path isn't fully visible yet. And that's where you are right now. On the edge, between what was and what's coming. You might feel like things have been slowing down lately, or even falling apart in certain areas. Plans delayed. Opportunities unclear. Energy shifting in ways you didn't expect. But what if nothing is falling apart? What if everything is being repositioned? What if the delays were protection? What if the confusion was preparation? Because sometimes life doesn't give you what you want right away. Not because you're being denied, but because you're being prepared to handle something bigger. And bigger requires a different version of you, stronger, clearer, more aligned, more aware. That version doesn't just appear overnight. It's shaped in these quiet moments of reflection, these subtle internal battles, these periods where you feel like you're in between identities. That's where transformation happens, not in the spotlight, but in the unseen. And right now, something inside you is waking up. You can feel it, can't you? A sense that you're no longer willing to settle. A sense that your time, your energy, your purpose mean more than they used to. A sense that you're being pulled toward something you can't fully explain yet, but you know it's real. That's not imagination. That's direction, and Friday is where it begins to become visible. Not necessarily with a dramatic event, but with a shift in you, a decision, a realization, a moment where you choose differently than you did before. Because transformation isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a quiet, "I'm done with this version of myself." Sometimes it's a silent commitment to do things differently, even if no one else notices at first. Sometimes it's simply choosing to believe, just for a moment, that you are meant for more, and that moment changes everything. So as Friday approaches, don't just treat it like another day. Treat it like a doorway, a reset, an opening. Pay attention to what you feel. Pay attention to what no longer resonates. Pay attention to the ideas, the impulses, the sudden clarity that may start to come through, because those aren't random either. They are signals, guidance, pieces of a path that is beginning to reveal itself, step by step. You don't need the full map. You only need the next step, and trust that if you've made it this far, if you've felt this shift, if something inside you is resonating with these words, then you are not behind. You are not lost. You are not late. You are right on time, right at the edge of something new. So stand still for a moment, take a breath, and recognize where you are. Because this feeling, this quiet anticipation, it's not ordinary. It's the beginning. And Friday, that's when you step into it, because something inside you is ready to change. You didn't become this person overnight, and neither will the new you. There were days you thought you wouldn't make it through, days when everything felt heavy, when even the smallest tasks felt like mountains, days when your mind wouldn't slow down, when doubt kept repeating the same questions over and over again. Am I enough? Am I doing this right? Why does this feel so hard? And maybe no one ever saw those moments. Maybe to the outside world, you looked fine. You smiled when you had to. You showed up when you were expected to. You kept going, even when a part of you wanted to stop. But deep down, you knew how much you were carrying. You knew how many times you had to pick yourself up silently, without applause, without recognition. You knew the nights when sleep didn't come easily, when your thoughts were louder than your surroundings. And yet, you're still here. That matters more than you realize, because not everyone makes it through those internal battles the way you did. Not everyone learns how to stand back up after being mentally, emotionally, or even physically exhausted. But you did. Even when you didn't feel strong, you were building strength. Even when you felt lost, you were learning direction. Even when it felt like nothing was changing, everything was shaping you. Think about it. Every disappointment you faced, every time something didn't work out the way you hoped, every moment you felt overlooked, underestimated, or misunderstood. It wasn't random. It was refining you. It was teaching you patience when things didn't happen instantly. It was teaching you resilience when things fell apart. It was teaching you self-awareness when you had no choice but to sit with your own thoughts and figure things out from within. And yes, it hurt. Growth often does. No one talks enough about that part, the uncomfortable middle. The phase where you're no longer who you used to be, but not yet who you're becoming. That in-between space can feel confusing, lonely even. You start to outgrow people, habits, and environments that once felt normal. Conversations don't feel the same. Your interests begin to shift. You start seeing things from a different perspective, and suddenly you don't quite fit where you used to. That's not failure. That's evolution. You weren't meant to stay the same forever. And those moments when you felt like everything was falling apart, those were the moments when your old patterns were breaking down, because something new was trying to take their place. But here's the part most people miss. Preparation doesn't always look like progress. Sometimes preparation looks like setbacks. Sometimes it looks like delays. Sometimes it looks like doors closing without explanation. And in those moments, it's easy to think you're going backwards. But you weren't. You were being redirected, protected from things that weren't meant for you, strengthened for things that are. Every challenge added something to you. Maybe it gave you thicker skin. Maybe it taught you how to read people better. Maybe it forced you to rely on yourself in ways you never had before. Maybe it showed you what truly matters and what doesn't. Those lessons didn't come easy, but they came with purpose, because the version of you stepping into this next phase, that version requires all of it. It requires the patience you developed when things took longer than expected. It requires the discipline you built when you had to keep going without motivation. It requires the awareness you gained when you started questioning your own patterns and choosing better ones. It requires the strength you didn't even know you had until life gave you no other choice but to find it. Nothing was wasted. Not the pain, not the confusion, not the moments you doubted yourself, not even the times you felt like giving up. All of it was part of your foundation. And now, you're starting to see it differently, aren't you? Things that once felt like obstacles now look like lessons. Things that once felt like endings now look like turning points. You're beginning to understand that you weren't being held back. You were being built up. Piece by piece, moment by moment, into someone who can handle more, see more, and be more. And that realization changes everything. Because when you truly see your past for what it was, not as something that broke you, but as something that shaped you, you stop carrying it as a burden. You start carrying it as strength. You stop asking, why did this happen to me? And you start realizing, this happened for me, to prepare you, to sharpen you, to align you. And now, here you are, not the same person you used to be, not as easily shaken, not as quick to doubt yourself, not as willing to settle. You've grown. Even if it happened quietly, even if no one clapped for it, even if it took longer than you expected. You've changed, and that change is not something small. It's everything, because now you're stepping into a phase where those lessons begin to work in your favor, where your past stops feeling like weight and starts becoming fuel, where your experiences give you clarity instead of confusion, where your resilience turns into confidence. This is where things begin to shift, not because life suddenly becomes easy, but because you have become stronger, wiser, more aware, and more aligned with who you're meant to be. So if you ever doubted whether everything you went through had meaning, let this be your reminder. It did, every single moment of it. And it brought you here, to this point, to this version of yourself. Ready for what's next, and every moment led you here. Not everyone will understand the new version of you. Change doesn't just affect your plans. It affects your people. It shifts the way you think, the way you move, the way you respond. And slowly, almost quietly, it begins to reshape your relationships. At first, you might not even notice it. You're just focused on yourself, on growing, on healing, on trying to become a better version of who you used to be. You start changing your habits, your mindset, your priorities. You start saying no to things you used to tolerate, and yes to things that actually align with you. And that's when it begins. Not everyone grows with you. Not everyone understands the shift you're going through. And not everyone is meant to stay. That realization can be one of the hardest parts of growth. Because you remember who you were with those people. You remember the laughter, the connection, the familiarity. There's history there. There are shared moments that meant something to you. But growth doesn't for permission. It doesn't pause just because you're comfortable. It keeps moving forward, and it asks you to move with it. And as you do, you start to notice the differences. Conversations that once felt natural now feel forced. Situations you once accepted now feel draining. Environments you once blended into now feel out of place. It's not that you think you're better than anyone. It's that you're different now. Your mindset has shifted. You've started to value your time more. You've started to protect your energy. You've started to think long-term instead of just living in the moment. And those changes, they don't always align with the same people, the same patterns, the same dynamics. That doesn't make anyone wrong. It just means you're on different paths. And that's where the internal conflict begins. Part of you wants to hold on because it's familiar, because it's comfortable, because letting go even when it's necessary can feel like loss. But another part of you knows the truth. You can feel it. You can't go back to who you used to be. You can't shrink yourself to fit into spaces you've outgrown. You can't ignore the awareness you've developed just to keep things the same, because the same is no longer aligned with who you're becoming. And that's not selfish. That's growth. Real growth requires honesty. It requires you to look at your relationships and ask difficult questions. Do these connections support who I'm becoming? Do they respect my boundaries? Do they add to my peace or take away from it? And sometimes the answers aren't easy. Sometimes they lead you to create distance. Sometimes they lead you to speak up when you used to stay silent. Sometimes they lead you to walk away, not out of anger, but out of clarity. And that takes strength. More strength than people realize, because independence isn't just about being alone. It's about being aligned. It's about knowing who you are and choosing not to compromise that for the sake of comfort or approval. It's about standing firm in your growth, even when it means standing by yourself for a while. And yes, there may be moments where it feels lonely, moments where you question if you're doing the right thing, moments where you miss the old connections, even if they no longer fit your life. That's human. That's part of the process. But loneliness during growth is not a sign that you're on the wrong path. It's often a sign that you're creating space for healthier connections, space for people who match your mindset, your values, your direction, space for relationships that don't require you to shrink, to pretend, or to explain your growth, because those people do exist. But you won't find them if you stay tied to what no longer aligns. And the truth is, as you grow, your circle may get smaller, but it also gets stronger, more intentional, more genuine, more aligned with who you are becoming, not who you used to be. And that's where real connection begins, not in convenience, not in history, but in alignment, in shared values, in mutual respect, in understanding. So don't be afraid of the changes happening in your relationships. Don't see them as something you're losing. See them as something you're refining, because every shift is teaching you something. Who supports you, who drains you, who understands you, and most importantly, who you are when you're no longer trying to fit into someone else's expectations. That's power, that's independence, that's growth. And as you continue to evolve, you'll realize something important. You don't need everyone to understand you. You don't need everyone to stay. You don't need approval to move forward. All you need is alignment with yourself. Because when you have that, everything else begins to fall into place. The right people, the right energy, the right connections. They meet you where you are, not where you used to be. So keep growing, keep choosing yourself. Keep honoring the version of you that is emerging, even if it changes everything around you. Because at the end of the day, you're not here to stay the same. You're here to become. And that journey, it requires courage, it requires honesty, and most of all, it requires you, and that's when you know you're evolving. Friday won't announce itself, but you'll feel it. Not all transformation is loud. Not all change arrives with a clear sign, a big moment, or an obvious turning point. Sometimes, the most powerful shifts happen quietly, subtly, in ways that are easy to overlook if you're not paying attention. And lately, something has been different, hasn't it? Not dramatic, not overwhelming, just different. It's in the way you think, the way you respond, the way certain things no longer affect you the way they used to. Situations that once pulled you into overthinking now pass through your mind with less resistance. You don't react as quickly. You pause. You observe. You choose your response instead of being controlled by it. That's not random. That's growth. It's in the way your priorities are shifting. Things that once felt urgent no longer feel important, and things you used to ignore. Your peace, your time, your energy are starting to matter more than ever before. You're becoming more intentional, more aware of where your energy goes and who it goes to. And that awareness changes everything. Because once you see clearly, you can't go back to ignoring what drains you. You can't pretend not to notice what doesn't align. You can't keep giving the same effort to things that no longer feel right. That's where clarity begins, not as a sudden realization, but as a quiet understanding that builds over time. A knowing, a sense that you're starting to see things for what they truly are, not just what you wanted them to be. And with that clarity comes confidence. Not loud, attention-seeking confidence, not the kind that needs validation or approval, but a steady, grounded confidence. The kind that shows up in small ways, in the way you say no without over-explaining, in the way you trust your instincts, even when others don't understand, in the way you walk away from situations that no longer feel right, without needing closure from anyone else. That's a different kind of strength, a quiet strength, the kind that doesn't need to prove itself, because it already knows. And maybe you've noticed it in your daily life. You're not rushing as much, not chasing as much, not forcing things to happen the way you used to. You're allowing, trusting, letting things unfold, instead of trying to control every outcome. And, strangely, that's bringing more peace than pressure ever did. Because you're starting to understand something deeper. Not everything needs to be forced. Not everything needs to be figured out all at once. Some things reveal themselves when you're ready. Some paths become clear when you take the first step. Not before. And right now you're in that space, where things are aligning. Not perfectly, but intentionally, where the noise is slowly fading, and your inner voice is becoming easier to hear. That voice that tells you when something feels right. That voice that nudges you in a certain direction, even when you can't explain why. That voice you used to doubt, but are now beginning to trust. That's not coincidence. That's connection. Connection to yourself, to your intuition, to a deeper understanding of who you are becoming. And as that connection strengthens, you start to notice external changes too. The way certain people interact with you, the way opportunities begin to appear or disappear, the way your environment starts to reflect your internal state. Because when you change internally, your external world begins to shift with you. It may not happen all at once. It may not even be obvious at first. But it happens in subtle ways, in conversations that feel more aligned, in moments that feel more peaceful, in decisions that feel more certain, and even in challenges that feel different. Not easier but clearer. Because now, instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you start asking, "What is this teaching me?" That shift alone changes everything. It turns obstacles into lessons. It turns confusion into curiosity. It turns setbacks into stepping stones. And that's how transformation works. Not in one big moment, but in a series of small, consistent shifts. A different thought here, a better choice there, a moment of awareness that changes how you respond next time. It builds slowly, quickly, powerfully, until one day you look back and realize you're not the same person anymore. Not because something dramatic happened, but because you changed from the inside out. And the most beautiful part, you didn't force it. You allowed it. You stayed through the uncomfortable moments. You faced your own patterns. You questioned your own beliefs. You chose growth, even when it wasn't easy, even when it wasn't clear. And now, you're starting to see the results in your mindset, in your energy, in your presence. There's a calmness about you now, a sense of direction even if you don't have all the answers yet. A quiet confidence that says, "I trust myself to figure it out." That's transformation. Not loud, not rushed, not obvious to everyone, but undeniable to you. So if things feel different lately, if you feel more aware, more grounded, more intentional, if certain things no longer resonate and new perspectives are starting to form, don't ignore that. Don't question it too much. Trust it, because those small shifts, they're not small at all. They are signs, signals that you're evolving, that you're stepping into a new version of yourself, one that sees clearer, moves smarter, feels deeper, and stands stronger. And this is only the beginning, because something is already unfolding. If this message reached you, then your new chapter has already begun. And now, here you are, after everything you've felt, everything you've questioned, everything you've been through, you've arrived at this moment. Not by accident, not by chance, but by becoming. Because that's what this has all been about. Becoming. Not the version of you that the world expected, but the version of you that was always there, waiting beneath the doubt, beneath the fear, beneath the old patterns that no longer fit. And now, you can feel it clearly. Something has changed, not just around you, but within you. You think differently. You move differently. You see yourself differently. And that shift, that internal transformation, that's the most powerful kind there is. Because once you change from the inside, nothing outside of you can control your direction anymore. This is where confidence begins to take root. Not the kind that shouts or tries to prove something to others, but the kind that stands quietly and says, I know who I am now. The kind that doesn't need constant reassurance. The kind that doesn't crumble at the first sign of difficulty. The kind that trusts, even when the path isn't fully clear. Because deep down, you've realized something important. You've already survived things you once thought would break you. You've already walked through moments that felt impossible at the time, and you came out stronger, wiser, more aware. So, why would you doubt yourself now? Why would you question your ability to handle what's next, when everything behind you proves that you can? This is your reminder. You are not starting from zero. You are starting from experience, from growth, from lessons that have shaped you into someone capable of far more than you used to believe. And that's why this moment matters. Because this is where you stop hesitating. This is where you stop waiting for the perfect time. This is where you stop questioning whether you are ready. You are ready, not because everything is perfect, not because you have every answer, but because you've become someone who can figure it out along the way. That's what readiness really is. And yes, change will still feel unfamiliar at times. There will still be moments where you step into the unknown, moments where you feel the edge of uncertainty. But instead of seeing that as something to fear, you're starting to see it for what it really is: opportunity, expansion, growth in motion, because the life you're stepping into, it requires a version of you that is willing to move forward, even without guarantees. A version of you that trusts your instincts, that honors your boundaries, that chooses alignment over comfort. And that version is already here. You don't need to search for it. You don't need to become someone else. You just need to fully step into who you already are. And that takes belief. Real belief. The kind that doesn't disappear when things get hard. The kind that stays steady, even when results aren't immediate. The kind that reminds you, again and again, I didn't come this far just to stop here, because you didn't. You didn't go through all of that just to stay in the same place. You didn't grow just to shrink yourself again. You didn't learn all those lessons just to ignore them now. No, you went through it all to rise, to step into something greater, to become someone who leads your life with intention, with clarity, with purpose. And now, it's time to embrace that fully. No more holding back, no more dimming your light to make others comfortable, no more doubting whether you deserve what you're working toward. You do, you always have. And the more you believe that, the more your actions will begin to reflect it. Because confidence isn't something you wait for, it's something you practice in the way you speak, in the way you decide, in the way you show up for your own life. And every small step you take from this point forward, it reinforces that belief, it strengthens that identity, it builds momentum, until one day, you're not just thinking differently, you're living differently, fully, authentically, powerfully. So embrace this change. Don't resist it. Don't question it too much. Lean into it. Because this is not something happening to you. This is something happening for you. This is your next level unfolding. This is your life expanding in ways you once only imagined. And yes, it may still feel a little unfamiliar, but that's because you've never been this version of yourself before. And that's a good thing. That's a powerful thing. That means you're growing. That means you're evolving. That means you're stepping into something new. So, stand tall in this moment. Own your journey. Honor how far you've come. And trust, fully, that you are exactly where you need to be. Because you are not here by accident. You are not here by luck. You are here because you are meant to be. Chosen, not in the sense that everything will be easy, but in the sense that you have what it takes. Chosen to grow, chosen to rise, chosen to step forward when others stay comfortable, chosen to become who you were always meant to be. And now it's your move. Steep into it with confidence. Step into it with belief. Step into it knowing that everything you've been through has led you here for a reason. This is your moment, your shift, your beginning. And what's ahead of you? It's bigger than anything you've left behind. So move forward with excitement, with purpose, with the kind of energy that says, I'm ready for what's next. Because you are, you always have been. And now, it's time to show it. Friday is the beginning. Now step into who you were meant to become.